Hello everyone, Voodoo here, and I'm back today with another video looking forward a bit by looking back. So today we're going to take a look at 10 things I want to see from the past for Havoc returning in the presumed eventual update to Havoc. Now, of course, we don't know what's going to happen, and Havoc hasn't been around for that long. We can only come in a Legion, so it's been about, I think, 8 years now or so. Yeah, that's about right. Crazy, isn't it? Legion was 8 years ago. We're going to take a look at some stuff throughout all the expansions that happened so far. Talk about what I think should be back that isn't. Now, of course, my mic is still kind of messed up, so stick with me here with the headset mic. And with that, I don't know, just like, comment, and subscribe. Make sure you like the video. Liking is free, helps support me, it's for the new people. And dive in. So for the first thing that I want back, it's actually a twofer, and the reason it's a twofer is because they both revolve around the same thing. That is Balanced Blades or Revolving Blades. Now both of these are from older expansions. Balanced Blades is from Legion, it was on our Legion artifact weapon, and Revolving Blades was an Azerite essence or Azerite trait from Battle for Azeroth. Now what these both do is they empower Blade Dance in different ways. What Balanced Blade does is it gives you 3% extra damage on Blade Dance for each target within 8 yards, so it's a way of increasing the AoE damage of Blade Dance, which admittedly has basically none right now. Revolving Blades is a bit different. It basically is just a flat extra damage amp to Blade Dance, and then also a reduction on the Fury of your next one for each enemy hit by the final slash. So this is a bit more of a single target thing, because Fury and AoE isn't that big of a deal, because it's just Chaos Strikes. But what these both do is they amplify Blade Dance in some way. Blade Dance and Death Sweep are probably one of the most iconic abilities for Havoc Demon Hunter. We use it all the time. It's like a pretty big moment in our rotation. They're big moment fans. But it's really currently like underexplored in our talent tree. There's like 1 or 2 nodes that buff it, those being First Blood and Trail of Ruin, both of which are kind of like, whatever. And it doesn't really do any AoE damage, which is why I think Balanced Blade is going to be my favorite pick to bring back, because it's an AoE damage for it. But realistically, in general, both of these things just kind of speak to add more things onto Blade Dance. Put more hooks there. There's not really a ton of things there to it. It's basically kind of a just button we push every 7 seconds. There's nothing super cool about it. Doesn't really do a ton of AoE damage. Not a lot of choice with it. So both these get mentioned because they both empower Blade Dance and give a little bit of AoE damage to it, but both of them in different ways. All right, the next thing I want to see back is Chaos Cleave. Now, Chaos Cleave is a talent from Legion, which basically states that Chaos Strike hits all nearby enemies for additional 10% damage. Now, I don't think this should be brought back 1 for 1. I think it's probably too powerful and too overbearing of like an AoE profile to just have exist in this state. But I think some modification of Chaos Cleave, where you get it for a short amount of time, or Blade Dance makes your next 4 or 5 Chaos Strikes cleave, or some form of allowing this to happen would go for a long way of giving us more AoE damage outside of our cooldowns. One of Havoc's big issues right now is that all of our damage is inside of our IV Essence Break window. So giving us some form of Chaos Cleave would allow us to spread that around. Now, I don't know, this might have some fun implications with Burning Blades, which would be pretty interesting. Maybe this can work with Shattering Souls off for Eldrachi. There's a lot they could do with this to make it not that broken, but still allow for some form of like chaos cleaving your Chaos Strikes around and not make it feel so bad to push in Mythic Plus. Again, like having this happen after Blade Dance, or having this be like a buff you can trigger for a short amount of time, or something like that, just to make your Chaos Strikes cleave, I think would go a long way. I don't think bringing this back as the base talent would be better, but having some form of ability to proc this, I think would be pretty nice and allow for a nice little boost to AoE damage when you don't have your cooldowns rolling. The next thing I want to see brought back is a legendary from Shadowlands. Don't freak out when I say Shadowlands, but it is Fel Bombardment. Now, Fel Bombardment is a power that basically states that Immolation Aura damage is a chance to grant you a stack of Fel Bombardment, increasing the damage that your next throw glaive deals to your primary target by 50% and launching an additional glaive at a nearby target, stacking up to 5 times. So 5 stacks of this, you're doing 250% extra damage to the main target, and shooting out 5 additional glaives and AoE damage around you. Now, if you are looking for a glaive payoff, I think this is probably the best one you can get in the game. This was actually in our talent tree in Dragonflight Beta. They removed it for, I don't know, I think some stupid reasons. Basically, the glaives were targeting enemies you weren't in combat with, and they just didn't feel like fixing it. But one big gripe I have with our talent tree is that a lot of the builds kind of lack real payoffs at the bottom of the tree. I think Fel Bombardment is a great way to bring together not only like a Ragefire Immolation Aura build, but also to kind of string together all of the glaive talents, right? Throwing out 5 glaives and having your primary glaive dealing a bunch of extra damage to your primary target is a great way of doing both priority damage and a ton of AoE damage with the glaives, which kind of cap out at 3 targets. So well, I think this does have some problems to it because of the fact that, you know, it can hit things out of combat. I don't think that's that hard to fix. I mean, I'm not a dev, so I don't know. But the code's already in the game. You can go like use this if you want, but I don't think it should be that hard to port over. I think it would do a great job of tying together 2 parts of the tree, the glaive stuff and the Immolation Aura stuff, and also give us a really satisfying and pretty fun capstone to those builds. If you haven't ever played with this, throwing a glaive and shooting out like 16 glaives because you're throwing 2 extra glaives and all the glaives are bouncing everywhere and you're throwing Soul Scar and everything and you're doing a ton of damage that way. It's really fun and it looks visually really cool, and I would love to see this thing come back in some form as like a capstone. Now next up is Rage of the Illidari. Now Rage of the Illidari was an artifact weapon kind of talent. I don't really know what to call it, but it was on our artifact weapon tree. Basically what it did is when Fury of the Illidari ends, which turned into Glaive Tempest, so it's basically the same abilities. Think of Fury of the Illidari as Glaive Tempest. 60% of the damage it dealt erupts an explosion of Fel energy, dividing that chaos damage among all nearby enemies. Now, I think this ability is honestly a little bit boring, but I'm putting it on this list because I want some way to have Glaive Tempest do more, right? It just sits there as a capstone. There's no abilities or other talents leading off of it. I think there's a lot of design space that Glaive Tempest can have it work with the glaive talents, give it some extra little spice when it ends, like Rage of the Illidari, which rewards you for doing damage properly with it and actually buffs it up. Give us some way to invest in that talent to make it more worthwhile, make it deal more damage, and just have it be a cooler ability. Now, again, not like super thrilled with this one specifically, but I'm throwing it on this list as a thing that they could bring back and maybe spruce up and amp up a little bit. Like maybe you get a buff. Maybe, I don't know, maybe it splits into 2 glaives, maybe. There's a bunch of other things I could do with this. I myself am of the camp thinking that it should work with our glaive-empowered stuff, so have it work with Soul Scar, have it work with the things that buff your glaives. I think that'd be super sick, and a really cool, like, kind of capstone if they don't bring back Felfire, Immolation, Bomb stuff. But I can see this one, you know, coming back, being a nice little extra talent point to give you more damage on Glaive Tempest, which is crazy. It doesn't have anything buffing it. Fel Bombardment, Fel Barrage, sorry, is another thing I think that could use something, but there weren't really any talents that worked off of it. But it's crazy an ability like this just has nothing. Like, imagine Strike of the Windlord, which was the Windwalker ability, I think, from Legion. It came back. It has like 6 talents that buff it in the tree. Blade Tempest, which is the Havoc Demon Hunter artifact ability, has none. So I think something to buff that up would be pretty cool, and this is a pretty easy and pretty quick one to throw in the tree. Now next up is a big one, and it is Chaos Blades. And this was a talent that was around, I think, just during Legion. Might have been around at the start of BFA as well, I don't remember. I didn't really play that much then. But what this is a 2-minute cooldown. It increases all your damage done by 30% for 18 seconds, and while active, your auto attacks deal 150% increased damage and also deal chaos damage. So this is a really nice extra cooldown that Havoc had, and a lot of people want this back. Personally, I kind of want to see what happens if they get rid of meta and give us this instead. Now, they'll never do that, but I think having another ability or another way to amp damage would be a pretty fun thing to have for Havoc. Imagine you meta, you Chaos Blades, and you're just doing a ton of damage there. Now, that does have some of the issues that Havoc has already, where a ton of your damage is inside your cooldown. But having the ability to have like multiple CDs, you know, do you split them up in different encounters? Do you combine them for a big pull? Do you split them up so you have more damage for 2 pulls? There's a lot of stuff you can do with this, even if they like have it be our only CD, have it come back as like a different form. I think some way of getting Chaos Blades back would be super sick. Bringing this back, there's a lot they can do with it as well. So I think it would be super sick to bring this back just in some way or form, have it be a capstone on the bottom of the tree, be fun to play around with, and stuff like that. All right, next up, I want to talk about Anguish of the Deceiver. Now, Anguish the Deceiver is an old, again, artifact weapon talent. It basically makes it that each time I-Beam deals damage, it applies Anguish, and whenever Anguish expires, it deals damage per stack. What this did was cause I-Beam to do a pretty big AoE explosion later on, and this is a thing that I just think is fun. Add some cool animations to this. You I-Beam a target, it blows up and blasts a ton of damage everywhere. I think this would be a pretty cool way of making I-Beam scale a little bit better in AoE and single target. Although actually right now I-Beam actually does do a lot of damage. But I think Anguish the Deceiver is just a fun little extra dot thing. It's a more interesting way of having a damage component tacked onto I-Beam than something like Looks Can Kill or something like Isolated Prey, where yeah, this is just like an extra X% damage to I-Beam, but it's going about it in an interesting way. It's like how Trail of Ruin is just like, yeah, extra X% damage to Blade Dance, but it does it in a more interesting way. So I think just honestly across the tree in general, some way of having these, X% extra damage to this ability in a more interesting and unique way would go a long way in making the tree just more exciting, right? Instead of just being like, I-Beam does 10% more, I-Beam does 20% more, I-Beam does 30% more. Having one of those be like, I-Beam leaves a dot for every tick it deals that explodes into a big explosion of damage. That sounds kind of cool, sounds kind of fun, sounds like something I want to build up to, something I'm looking forward to. So just having those more interesting moments in the rotation can kind of stop that feeling of being just doing nothing outside of your CDs and then you're doing the same thing every time, which I think would be pretty fun. All right, so next up is actually another twofer, and that is because it is 2 tier sets. Now the first tier set, I'm sure everyone knows, is Screaming Torch Fiend's Brutality, which is the Amidrasil Season 3 Dragonflight tier set. This one was probably the best tier set Havoc's ever had. Basically what it is whenever you use Blade Dance, you automatically throw a glaive at your primary target for full damage. So you would use one of your glaive charges and chuck a glaive at your target, and then each slash has a 50% chance to throw a glaive at an enemy for 35% damage. So you'd push Blade Dance, you'd always throw one glaive if you have a charge, and then every time you use a slash, you have a 50% chance to throw another. So on average, I think you'd get like 2 or 3 extra glaives per Blade Dance on top of the one you're already throwing. Which was really fun. Now the 4-piece was also pretty fun. Whenever you throw glaive, you reduce the cooldown of the hunt. The hunt's a pretty fun button to push, gives you more actual utility out of it. But this is just another talent that can be a capstone to a glaive build, which historically there's just not really a capstone for, and there's no end to it. What it also does is gives us more damage outside of our cooldowns as a way of having that sustained damage that isn't just pushing Chaos Strike over and over and over again until the cows come home. Now, I think the 2-piece is the more important part here. Bringing the 4-piece back would be fine. Again, pushing the hunt more is pretty interesting and pretty fun, but I think the 2-piece is the real deal here. The other one is the Husk of the Hypogeal Nemesis, which is actually our current tier set. Now, the 2-pieces I don't give a single care about at all. It's just Blade Dance deals more damage. But what I do like is the proc on the 4-piece. Now, I think one of the big problems with Havoc's gameplay, aside from AFI, and I think AFI has other problems, is that Havoc has like no procs to it. There's nothing to react to. It's all just like the same every single time. The only reaction is really less like how to play your character in melee. I think having some kind of proc is really fun for Havoc. So having the 25% chance to reset Blade Dance and have it Costless Fury on Chaos Strike is actually like really enjoyable. And once we lose it, it's actually going to be pretty rough for rotation, where now it's like you're pushing Chaos Strike and it's spiced up a bit with random Blade Dance resets. After that, it'll be, okay, Blade Dance is every 7 seconds exactly, and you just push Chaos Strike until that happens. You could almost get a robot to do the rotation at that point, which I don't think is very good. So having some kind of proc I think would be great. I think this is a pretty easy proc to just bake into the spec. I would prefer having Screaming Torch Fiend's Brutality, the glaive stuff, but if we're only getting one of them, either of them are fine. But the proc I think is actually pretty fun gameplay-wise, and I think it's fun to look at other procs that Havoc might be able to have. All right, my next thing I want back, coming in at number 8, is another big hitter. This is Raddons Cascading Eyes. Now this is a legendary from Legion, a legendary, where every time you use I-Beam, the cooldown on I-Beam is reduced by 0.3 seconds each time it hits an enemy, up to a maximum of 20 seconds. Now, I think this is a incredibly busted, broken ability. But I think some form of nerf version for AoE could be pretty fun. People really love pushing I-Beam. People really love using that ability because it gives you more demon form. It's a pretty flashy, cool ability to push. One of the downsides here, of course, is that this just doesn't work in a world where Essence Break exists, unless you also somehow get CDR and Essence Break the same way, or you're also like reducing it to 20 seconds. I think if they gave us this instead of Cycle of Hatred, sick. Because in AoE, this is always 20 seconds. Single target, it's like, I don't even know. I don't remember off the top of my head how many times I-Beam deals damage. I think this is like 4 seconds off in single target. But in AoE, this is fun. There's a really famous clip, which I'll probably play and have playing right now, of Meme Beam, where you're just chaining I-Beam back to back to back to back. Because I'm not sure if this always had a cap on it. I don't remember. I didn't really play in Legion. But really fun talent to just get a ton of I-Beams, which I think a lot of people really enjoy and be super fun. All right, next up is two things returning from Shadowlands, and again, don't get scared when I say Shadowlands, and these are the Covenant Legendaries for the Hunt, or Sigil of Suffering, otherwise known as the Legion Decree. Those are being Blazing Slaughter for the Hunt, and Blind Faith for the other one. So what Blazing Slaughter does is whenever you use the Hunt, you gain an Immolation Aura, and whenever you hit your target, you gain 4% agility for each enemy hit. So this had some pretty cool implications with something like Ragefire, which didn't exist back then, but would now. This actually gave you, like, Unbound Chaos, like it like cast an Immolation Aura basically, so you get all the benefits of it, and it gave you a nice little agility proc for the Hunt. The Hunt right now doesn't do a lot of damage. We just take it because it's like free extra damage, but it doesn't do a ton. So having this do a little extra something, having it be a little talent point that go off the bottom of it, if we get more points in our class tree, I think would be super fun. Pretty flavorful, pretty fun stuff to do here. Giving us an Immolation Aura is super great. Gives you Unbound Chaos, would probably give you Ragefire. The Growing Inferno would trigger, so I think some cool stuff here, and of course agility is super nice for AoE. Now the other one, Blind Faith, is more so for Vengeance, but if they don't change Eldrazi, which I really hope they do, this actually would be pretty good for Havoc now because of all the souls you get with Eldrazi Reaver. So what this does is that Legion Decree, otherwise known as Sigil of Suffering, would shatter 2 more soul shards, and also grant you a buff called Blind Faith for 20 seconds. During Blind Faith, every time you consume a soul fragment, you gain 10% Fury, 10 Fury and 1% versatility up to 20%. So it just gives you a ton of versatility. It used to be Mastery. They changed the verse because Mastery was useless for Vengeance, and Havoc didn't play Korayn at all. But I think either being Verse or Mastery obviously is way better, but even as Verse, like just getting that extra damage off of like a minute cooldown using Blind Faith, I think would be pretty sick and pretty fun, and would be a good like little add-on to some of these talents at the bottom of our class tree, just bringing some stuff back from the past. Alright, so the last thing I want to touch on today is another thing from Shadowlands, and this one actually isn't just for Havoc, but is the Wild Hunt Tactics and Wild Hunt Stratagem pair from the Korayn Soulbind tree of the Night Fae Covenant. And oh my lord, that was a lot of words just thrown together. Basically what this was is Wild Hunt Tactics was your damage to targets above 75% health is increased by 10%. There's also like a healing component, which wasn't really that important. So it's like 10% anti-execute damage, or like on pull damage. Then Wild Hunt Stratagem was that whenever you got Wild Hunt Tactics, you gained Wild Hunt Stratagem for a minute. The next time you damaged an enemy who was below 35% health, you gained 5% extra damage for 10 seconds. So a bit of an execute, not much. Much better for Mythic Plus than it was for Raid, but still better than Execute. So I'm talking about this stuff. While it isn't specifically Havoc, it was something that Havoc made use of for a lot of their time in Shadowlands, aside from the Venthyr era. But it was actually really, really good for them because, like, it's just a strong ability. Having Execute or start the damage, Execute, I don't even know what to call it, but damage at the start of pulls is normally the hardest parts in the fight. And Havoc just doesn't really have any way of dealing with that. I think some form of talent, maybe giving Blade Dance and Execute, giving Chaos Strike some extra damage above 80% health, I think that'd be pretty fun. And it would really fit in with the whole Demon Hunter thing, right? Like, we're Demon Hunters, we hunt demons, so we should be pretty good at closing in and killing prey, or at like engaging with prey as well. And we have Initiative, which was also from the Korayn tree originally, as like First Strike, I think was the original name. But I think even going further and giving us the ability to have, you know, extra execute damage to finish off targets, or extra damage on pull as we engage with our targets, would fit a lot with our class fantasy, with what we do in the game. It would be a pretty nice inclusion for Havoc just in general. On some talents. Of course, it's like going to be passive stuff, but it's going to be very valuable damage and would be a good pick in any fights that want that execute damage. So it would be a pretty interesting one to throw on the tree. So there we go, everybody. Those are 10 things, more like 13 things or so. I added a few freebies or twofers in there, but those are 10 things that I want to see brought back in the eventual presumed Havoc Demon Hunter rework. I scrounged Havoc's abilities of the past, so obviously, you know, I might have missed something. There wasn't a ton of material to go off of. Would love to have new stuff brought in. A lot of the other good stuff that existed in the past, they've already brought into the talent tree. But I think I grabbed some pretty fun stuff here, and stuff that I personally would enjoy playing with on the tree. So hopefully we see some stuff in 11.1. Let me know if I missed anything, if something else you want to see. And of course, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe to help grow the channel. Push the video around to more people. Again, apologies for the microphone. This should hopefully be my last video with my headset mic if the cord comes in on time and is actually the solution to my problem. But if not, this will probably happen still over Christmas, which unfortunate, but you know, it is what it is. So let me know down below how you thought about this list, what you want to see, what you don't want to see. Like the video, and I will see you guys next time. Peace. A big thank you to all of my channel members. Thank you to Zooligan, rpalms46, Fear Redefined, Justin Penny, Callum Price, Gabrielle Correa, Magicman 133, Falafador and Dark Terror, Sky Elk, and Brad Wisniak. Thank you all so much for supporting the channel. If you want to support the channel a little bit, consider becoming a channel member down below. And just thanks for watching the videos, everybody. Even if you don't become a channel member, you're still supporting me. So thanks, everybody. See you guys next time. Peace.